The military. They've been here since the very beginning, and are probably the most powerful faction in the entire zone. But despite this, the army is still struggling to contain the stalker phenomenon. Hello stalkers, and welcome to the Anomalous Dugout. In this video, we will take a look at the State Security Service of Ukraine in Chernobyl. First, we'll see how the faction is organized, and then we'll retrace their entire known history inside the zone. Obviously, there will be major spoilers, so you've been warned. Let us start with some general information about the military. Officially, their mission is to stop anyone from entering the zone, but also to prevent anything from exiting the zone, be it mutants, radioactive objects, or intruders.
Attention! You are approaching the secured perimeter of an ecological disaster zone. Illicit crossing of the perimeter is a criminal act. Any attempt to penetrate the secured zone will be punished by any means necessary.
The army is also tasked to escort and defend scientific expeditions. However, the soldiers don't really perform their duties with the most discipline, and what happens in practice is very different from the initial orders. Indeed, the army is plagued with a number of problems, such as material and human shortages, low morale, and lack of experience in the zone. This, combined with the high level of corruption from officers, is what allows stalkers to navigate in the zone and organize their illegal trades. In short, the military does not control the situation within the zone. But as we will see, they are actively trying to change that. Now onto their organization. The army in the zone is divided into three main types of soldiers. The first is described as regular army soldiers. They guard all roads into the zone, patrol its perimeter, kill mutants and hunt down looters. These are the normal grunts that you can encounter at the checkpoints in the borders of the zone, such as in the cordon. They are equipped with standard military equipment, comprised of green uniforms, Kalashnikov rifles, and usually don't have any headgear. Because of this poor protection, basic weaponry, and the lack of experience in the zone, the regular soldiers are often having a hard time dealing with stalkers and other dangers. And that's when the second group comes in, the Special Forces, also known as Spetsnaz. They are elite army troops, usually dispatched to the zone to conduct rescue operations and other special missions. These soldiers are more experienced in combat and are equipped with much better stuff. In protection, improved barrel armors and sphere helmets. In weaponry, top-tier assault rifles such as the Obokan, SA Avalanche and Groza. Obviously, the Spetsnaz are much more efficient than regular grunts, and that's why they're sent on dangerous missions. Yet, they still lack experience of the zone. Therefore, a third military group was created, called Military Stalkers. The PDA says, soldiers who underwent special training following their service in the zone, or stalkers who voluntarily signed a contract with the military. Used mainly to study the causes and effects of the catastrophe and to map out the zone. They can work on their own or in small detachments of up to 5 people. Military stalkers do not allow normal stalkers to approach and open fire on sight. Compared to the special forces, the military stalkers use the same kind of weapons, but are even more heavily protected, wearing either the Scat or Bulat armors along with various helmets. Despite his role of undercover agent, Major Dekhtyarev is often considered to be a military stalker. Before moving on, I would like to mention that some members of the military have connections with the Duty faction. Of course, they are officially enemies and will shoot at each other on sight, but it is obvious that things are happening behind the scenes. For instance, Duty was originally created by former army officers. According to some rumors, Duty soldiers have been seen dealing with Spetsnaz and military stalkers, and it is possible that they get their equipment and weapons directly from corrupt military commanders. But the most shocking example of these duty/military relations is by far the fact that some elite soldiers take part in the fights of the arena, along with the presence of an army general in the crowd. Alright, now let's move on to the interesting part, the known history of the military faction. Since the first Chernobyl disaster in 1986, the army has been guarding the perimeter around the exclusion zone. They had even established a base deep in the forbidden area, a place called the military warehouses. When the second disaster that created the Anomalous zone struck in 2006, most of the personnel in the zone was killed, and attempts to rescue the possible survivors all ended in failure. According to Sidorovich, the army organized a huge operation aimed at destroying the center of the catastrophe with nuclear explosives, but the military force was obliterated by an enormous emission. After that, the authorities were quick to cordon off the newly born zone, abandoning all the soldiers left inside. Most likely, many of the survivors slowly mutated into the beast known as the Snork. Others were more lucky, such as Tachenko and Krylov, who went on to found the Duty faction. From now on, the army focused on guarding the edges of the zone, with reinforced checkpoints and fences. As years passed, individuals known as stalkers started to make their way into the zone, prompting the army to take action. In early 2011, a new operation took place, where special forces were parachuted directly close to the center. This was probably done to avoid most of the anomalies, and possibly the brain scorcher as well. In any case, this mission was as disastrous as the previous one, with the soldiers being hit by an emission once again. All of this can be learned from Major Zvyagintsev, one of the survivors of this mission, who later joined Duty. In autumn of the same year, most likely in October, skirmishes started to occur between the military and stalkers located in the cordon. The corrupt commander, Major Kaletsky, had been dealing with the local stalkers, but he ended up selling some rookies to the bandits as slaves for their concentration camp. When the loners led by Father Valerian discovered this treason, they kidnapped the major, which started a small war. While many soldiers were defeated by the stalkers with the help of the mercenary S.T.A.L.K.E.R, it is likely that the army later retaliated with force, destroying the loners' base and taking back control over the cordon. Also, near the end of the year 2011, the famous military warehouses fell to the hands of the Freedom faction. The special forces and military stalkers defending the base had been hit hard by the latest emission, and they also had to deal with zombies, mutants, and Monolith forces who started to raid the area right after the blowout. Ultimately, the soldiers were destroyed, and Freedom seized the warehouses as their new base. Around the same time, new paths to the center of the zone were starting to be discovered around the forgotten city of Limansk, while various stalker factions rushed in the town to rise to the occasion. A group of Spetsnaz soldiers ended up in a defensive position in the city. We do not know how they arrived in Limansk and why they were here, but it is possible that they were part of some operation to investigate this new territory. In fact, an army chopper later flew over the Limansk hospital, which might confirm that an operation was taking place. Unfortunately, we don't know much more, and all the military forces, along with the chopper, were destroyed by S.T.A.L.K.E.R and the Clear Sky faction during their push towards the Chernobyl power plant. Now came the year 2012. That would be very important for the military. Indeed, a large campaign was launched by the Ukrainian government called Project Truth. As its name suggests, Project Truth was an investigation aimed at discovering the secrets behind the creation of the zone and the experiments that took place in its clandestine laboratories. While we don't really know why the army never launched such a campaign before this point, I believe that it had something to do with anomaly mapping. You see, all the operations that we will talk about from now on are directly or indirectly linked to Project Truth, and all of these operations involve military helicopters flying in the zone. So my theory is that before 2012, the army were not able to establish maps of the aerial anomalies, and thus flights in the zone were extremely dangerous. However, something happened in early 2012 that changed this situation. Most likely, a new technology was set up that would allow the army to scan the zone for anomalies in the air, and create maps of aerial anomalies for their choppers to safely travel, something that was not possible before. Anyway, the first known action, which was part of Project Truth, was Operation Agroprom. During the month of May 2012, the military sent a lot of soldiers at the Agroprom Institute to investigate its true nature. The institute itself was secured and turned into a base, while more troops were sent into the dangerous underground. Also, the military discovered that a group of stalkers, led by Mole, had established a camp in the nearby factory, so they organized a punitive raid. While the first wave of regular soldiers was not able to defeat the stalkers, Mole and the survivors quickly retreated before the second wave of special troops arrived. Shortly after, the Marked I, which was sent by Sidorovich, snuck into the military base and stole the investigation documents. These revealed what the officers had discovered. The institute was in fact used as a cover-up by an unknown group of scientists who worked in secret labs such as X-18. Having learned this information, it was obvious for both the Marked I and the military to launch a raid on this laboratory X-18 next. And that's what they did.
S.T.A.L.K.E.R, we're right above the target. Roger, start the action. S.T.A.L.K.E.R, drop your men on the roof. Do you read me? S.T.A.L.K.E.R, roger, on the roof it is.
While Marked I got to the lab first and managed to escape with important documents, groups of special forces were dropped in the area via helicopters, securing the building above the lab and engaging the bandits that had a base nearby. It is unknown what happened to the Dark Valley and Laboratory X-18 after that, but we can assume that the army seized it for further research. Now let's turn our attention to Yentar, where another secret laboratory called X-16 is located. from all the corpses of Spetsnaz soldiers in both the factory and the lab itself, it is obvious that the military had great interest in the lab and that they tried to get inside. From the looks of it, they clashed with stalkers from the Monolith faction, and they lost the battle. In fact, Lukash confirmed that a new squad of 10 soldiers went to this area again sometimes during the spring of 2012, but they lost one man and ran away. After the Mark I managed to enter X-16 and deactivate the psi emitter inside, which was turning everyone into zombies, Professor Sakharov of the nearby scientific bunker called some military choppers to clear out the factory. This confirms the fact that the army is working with the ecologists, even though ground troops are never seen around them. Adding to that, another helicopter did try to rescue Professor Kruglov's expedition when it was attacked by mercenaries, but it was shot down. In any case, it is very likely that the army tried again to secure Laboratory X-16 after the events of Shadow of Chernobyl, but we don't have any more information on that. Later in 2012, the same stalker, who was constantly one step above the military, the Mark I, made his way to the antennas of the Brain Scorcher and turned off the device. With the deadly psi emissions gone, all the factions realized that it was now possible to access the center of the zone, and everyone rushed towards the new territories, such as Pripyat and the nuclear power plant. The army was no different, and this time they were prepared and quick to react. First of all, they sent a large group of special forces to secure the antennas and the laboratory below, X-19. Since most of the Monolith troops guarding the area were already destroyed by the Mark I, it can be assumed that they succeeded in their mission. Whether or not they managed to hold on to their positions, this we do not know. Secondly, the army launched a massive scale assault onto the power plant, the very center of the zone. This operation, codename Monolith, involved many vehicles, such as armored BTRs, along with helicopters, tasked to drop their troops on specific points and to provide air support. This operation is probably the largest battle that ever happened in the zone. The attack, spearheaded by special forces and military stalkers, almost succeeded, as most of the Monolith forces defending the area were destroyed, and the military squads were very close to the entrance of the sarcophagus. Unfortunately for the army, their plans were once again crushed by a huge blowout. Despite this third failed attempt at capturing the CNPP, the authorities understood that they could not give up. With the Brain Scorcher down, anyone could now access the sarcophagus and its secrets. Therefore, a fourth operation was quickly planned, codename Fairway. Learning from their previous mistakes, the military developed blowout protective systems for their choppers. Every time they tried to get to the center of the zone, an emission occurred, so this time should not be different. Loaded with a mix of special forces and military stalkers, 5 Stingray helicopters took off at the end of July 2012, using the famous anomaly maps that I talked about before. Yet, none of the choppers reached the objective, and they all crashed in the area near Pripyat. While the survivors tried to regroup under the orders of their commander, Colonel Kowalski, The Security Service of Ukraine decided to send an undercover agent into the zone. Major Dektyrev was to infiltrate the S.T.A.L.K.E.R community, find out what happened to the choppers and the soldiers, and figure out the reasons of the failure of Operation Fairway. During the month of August 2012, the Major learned that some of the troops had survived, and he managed to find a way to the city of Pripyat, where they had established a base. In the city, the military encountered hostile Monolith forces and mutants, which caused even more casualties, but they managed to hold on. Major Dektyrev will even get his hands on a secret weapon manufactured inside the zone, the Gauss rifle, along with top-secret documentation about the experiments carried out in X labs. With the help of Strelok, a legendary stalker who turned out to be the Marked One all along, they realized why the helicopters crashed. Since anomalies move after each emission, their maps of aerial anomalies were useless without an update.
So that's what it is.
What?
This knowledge allowed helicopters to roam into the zone once again, and the remaining military men were ready to be evacuated. Finally, after a last confrontation with the Monolith faction, the few survivors of Operation Fairway were successfully extracted. And that's where the story of the military in the zone ends for now. Obviously, it will continue in the upcoming S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, and the events presented in this video are incomplete, since I could not describe everything in detail. To conclude, I would say that the military faction is like a coin with multiple sides. On one hand, the army is the pawn of the government, committed to hide the reality of the disaster and the ethically questionable events surrounding it. But on the other hand, they also protect the outside world from mutants and other horrors while supporting the scientists and their research. The commanders sometimes send their men to their deaths without hesitation, and other times get involved in the thick of things, making the best out of a terrible situation they've been forced into. And the soldiers themselves, yes, they have massacred mutants and stalkers alike, but in the end they are only following orders, trying to survive in an hostile world where everybody wants them dead. What about you, Stalker? What's your opinion on this? Make sure to tell me in the comments below. As for now, I thank you for watching, Stalkers, and goodbye.